First, let me put my namaskarams to Sri Shuklaji and also Rangachariji and all other stalwarts of ICAS. And my special thanks and appreciation to Dr. Holaji, because he has suddenly contacted me and asked me to give a presentation. Definitely, it's an honor to me. So I will be presenting my topic on succinct note on retrograde planets. So I'm sharing my presentation. Yeah. And good morning to all the participants, my fellow faculty members and other elderly people. Again, I'm putting namaskarams to all of them and starting my presentation. So finding a retrograde planet in any chart is a common as good as having a Buddhaditya Yoga. Almost every second person will have one or more planets classified as retrograde in his chart. A brief statistics about it is Venus is retrograde approximately 5% of the charts, and Mercury 8%, Mars is 7%, Jupiter is 22%, and Saturn is 26% of the charts. So, which means 52% of charts have at least one retrograde planet with likelihood of maybe Saturn or Jupiter or Mars or Mercury or Venus in that order. So horoscopes are drawn and analyzed on the basis of astronomical speed of planets. Some horoscopes indicate retro planet if the planet is going back. In real cosmic setup, no planet moves backward or even slow down in its orbit. So retrogression is termed as an apparent phenomenon. Retrogrades, station, and direct. These are the three states of a planet. They are the three cycles of a planet. Essentially, are the illusions from Earth's point of view. This is because the Earth is also orbiting around Sun with a different speed. So people like us on the Earth do not feel the speed of Earth and feels that the other planet is going back. So a retro planet is considered as away from Sun than its normal time, so it is less. So it is less combust. With this low combustion, the retro planet becomes more independent, and their effect on Earth is more intensive. As per classical theories, Vakri Balopeta is the normal dictum. So in mathematical part, in arriving at Shadbala and the avasthas of planets, motional strength, that is Shestabala, powerful motion, that is Shaktavastha, and accelerator movement, that is Bhitavastha of planets are calculated. Coming to the predictive part, the impact of retro planet is considered as different from that of its normal times. So predictive theories differed in giving importance to the retro position of planets. However, the study of retro planets is useful to know the native's past karma influence if this birth chart has any retro planets. So study of retro planet is in fact revealing valid information on the past karmic influence of the native. So retrograde frequency of planets is like this. Following is the frequency of planets retro movements. I'm going to show a table with all that. So Sun and Moon never seen on retro motion, and Rahu Ketu are always on retro motion. So let us see the chart of that. Now see, in this chart, I put all the 5 planets. Mars is the planet which takes 687 days to revolve around Sun. So it will be retrograde once in 2 years, almost approximately 80 days it will retrograde, and before and after retrogradation, 3 or 4 days it will be in a stationary mode, and while retrogradation it will be 226 approximately points. So it will be away 226 degrees away from Sun, and it is after direct it will be 130 degrees near Sun. So just now I discussed about the retrograde planets will be away from sun so that they will have more power. So this is what the retrograde degrees of the planet. So at the time of retrogradation, Mars might cause angry, poverty, accidents, etc. during its retrogradation. And Mercury takes 88 days to revolve around Sun, thrice in a year, and 24 days duration is 24 days each time when it retrogrades. 1 day before and after a stationary move cycle or stationary status. 14 to 20 degrees when it is away in retrogradation away from Sun, and 7 to 20 degrees when it is direct. So it generally changes the mood of the thinking, and also mood of the person. So Jupiter takes 12 years, once in a year frequency of retrogradation. 120 days it will be in retrograde mode state. 5 days and before and after approximately it is in stationary state, and 245 degrees at the time of retrogradation and 115 degrees at the time of direct. So generally misfortunes will take place when Jupiter is retrograde. So Venus 225 days. It will take 225 days for revolving around Sun once in 2 years. If you observe recently, Venus was retrograde, and now on I think 30th of January it became direct. So you generally it stays 42 days in retrograde motion, 2 days before and after in stationary motion, 29 degrees and 29 degrees, and generally separation from family life will take place during this. So Saturn, 29.5 years it will take, and once in a year, and each time it is 140 days. 5 days before and after it is in the stationary mode, and 251 degrees at the time of retrogradation, and 109 degrees at the time of direct. So misunderstandings mostly will take place when Saturn is retrograde. So state of the planets, ATI-CHARI motion. Actually, there are around 6 types of motions. The results of the fortune telling of the planet varies with the motion of planet as described. So Chari or direct motion, retrograde or Vakri, ATI-CHARI or high speed direction, and Stambhana or stationary, Mand or slow motion, and Atimand or very slow motion attributes to the different results. So we get different results based on the state of the planet. ATI-CHARI, Ati means more or great, whereas Chari means transit. So a planet is known to be ATI-CHARI planet when it moves at a speed more than its normal speed. So outer planets become ATI-CHARI when they come along with Sun. Usually Mars, Jupiter and Saturn do not get ATI-CHARI that frequently, and therefore whenever they get, they can really cause havoc. So if you notice on April 29th or so, Saturn is going to be ATI-CHARI. It is moving into Kumbha Rasi, and it will be back in the month of end of July approximately. So we have to observe how that retrograde, the ATI-CHARI planet, Saturn being ATI-CHARI, moving into the advanced second house from its current position. What will be the results? Normally, Mercury becomes frequently ATI-CHARI, and it transits in one sign around 14 to 15 days. So a planet said to be stationary when it is changing from apparent motion to retrograde motion, or the direct motion to retrograde, and retrograde to direct motion. So bear in mind that a planet never actually stops moving. It is an optical illusion. So we really need an ephemeris that shows daily planet positions. During the periods, they seem to slow down in their orbits. So ephemeris show D or R letters when the direction. D means direct and R means retrograde when the direction actually changes. This can be observed in the ephemeris. Now, retro planet, a karmic indicator. Study of retrograde planets as a karmic indicator is based on its influence on native's body and consciousness. Human body is composed of 5 elements, Panchabhutas. Native's consciousness is developed through the nerve centers, that is chakras, nerve centers, that is chakras, and on body sense organs, that is Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. So Sahasra and Agnya chakras are under the influence of Sun and Moon. Other chakras are under the influence of other 5 planets, as detailed below in the next slide. The Panchabhutas and 5 elements. The 5 planets, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, express the practical reality of our life. So they are the planets that form the Panchamaha Yogas that bestows greatness on earth. So they rule Panchamaha Purusha, they rule Panchabhutas and the five primary elements that influence our physical body but also shape the eternal consciousness. These elements control our organs of desires, emotions, and senses. So they can keep us grounded in gross reality. But if we start to use their energy spiritually, they become infused with a different power. The bhutas also rule the chakras, the subtle body. Chakras influence our senses. The, the fulfillment of sensuous nature keeps the individual tied to the cycle of happiness and unhappiness. The more we allow the sense to rule us, the more the doors to our astral self remain shut. So, which means we have to reduce our uh, we have to increase more our spiritual nature of the mind state. Understanding and controlling the senses will give indication of whether we are able to open the gates to the higher self. Retrograde planets influence the primary structure of human consciousness and its relationship with its human life. By blocking the chakras and complicating the Panchabhutas, they create disconnection and imbalance and inability and control of senses. So, an individual has to understand their retrograde planets and nurture them to bring back the harmony. The following is an indication of the planets and their connection to the chakras and elements. So here I have given a table in which each planet and the chakra which is blocking that particular sense. So take Mars as first one. It is Tejas and fire, the Tattva element and Indriya. So it affects this sight, eyes, feet and legs. So Manipura chakra deals with balance, vision and energy. When this Mars is retrograde, retro Mars blocks the way this particular Manipura chakra and creates problems in a subtle way. So logic gets skewed or twisted. So unethical but very powerful. Natives do not understand their own power and do not know how to use it properly. So that is where most of the times we end up in arguments and maybe meet with an accident kind of thing and all those things. So Mercury, it is Prithvi element. So smell, nose, and anus. These are the things which are connected to Mercury. Mooladhara chakra is blocked when Mercury is retrograde. So make native impractical, unstable. So retro Mercury talking too much or no talking at all. If you find in anybody's chart Mercury is retrograde, either they will be talking too much as against the general nature, or they don't talk much. If retro Mercury is also combust, native is unsure of using his Mercury qualities. Then Jupiter. Jupiter is again Akas Tattva. So hearing, ear, mouth, that is speech related things get affected. So Visuddha Chakra, which deals with the knowledge, wisdom, ability to purify the poisons, repel negative forces. This is what Visuddha Chakra does in our body. So when Jupiter retrograde, this particular Visuddha Chakra get blocked. So retro Jupiter spoils the Visuddha Chakra, that is a filtering of the negative thoughts and other things, and leads to wrong choices. So very knowledgeable but do not know how to use the knowledge what they have a different and unconventional viewpoint in understanding and advising others. So next one is uh, Venus. It is connected to taste, tongue, and genitals. So Visuddha Swadhisthana chakra deals with emotions, taste, happiness, and peace. So retro Venus may choose unusual affairs and do not know how to express love and affection. So when retro, maybe you can check back recently the 40 days when Venus was retrograde in the earlier in the month of December to February or January, those 2 months, those 42 days time, anything happened like this, do not know how to express love and affection, due to which you get, kind of misunderstandings and what do you call quarrels with the spouse and other things could be possible, or with the loved ones. Now the last point here is Saturn. It is related to Vayu. So touch, skin, and healing. These are the things which are connected to, and Anahata Chakra, it teaches dispassion and detachment. So when retro Saturn blocks this particular chakra and a native finds it difficult to do what to do. So retro Saturn native does not know when to stop working. So sometimes these people who have Saturn retrograde people, even in natal chart, either they work too much or they don't work at all. So native similarly when it is retrograde in transit also in the person's charts, then they will be unable to do whether to work more or work less also. So they are not very clear how to do that. So my studies and show that likely changes that may happen to for different planets turning retrograde, they are quantified here. Primarily, it will be behavioral changes that will affect one's life. That is one first point. Second, Mars may turn the native into a beast and uncontrollable rage and destruction. And it is also connected to the placement of Mars and whether it is functionally malefic or benefic to the native and all, we have to check. Mercury may Mercury may lessens one's interest in studies, lose concentration, lack of communication, etc. So as I told you that 3 times in a year Mercury will retrograde. So you can find this in children and others in losing their interest during that period while studying. So performance of education may get affected during Mercury retrograde. Jupiter can give extremes as becoming sannyasi or detachment or rejection of religion or God also. So Venus can cause less interest in opposite sex or loss of marital happiness or turn one into a sex maniac. Anything could be possible. Saturn can turn native into a workaholic or complete neglect of one's profession. So all the above happens only when the planet Dasa Bhukti operates. So this is in the natal chart of the native when the Dasa and Bhukti are operating, or when Dasa Bhukti operating at that time the planet which is in this retrograde state. So these are the possibilities of state. So how do we analyze the birth charts? While analyzing birth charts, the following points we need to keep in mind. Number one, while analyzing a birth chart, one must observe the following to know the impact of transiting retro planets on natal positions of the planets and houses. So lordship and placement of any retro planet at birth or in transit. One or more planets in retro at birth or transit. Dasa or Bhukti lots while in retro motion. Duration of retro planets in transit and its relation to the running Dasa and Bhukti lots I just now explained. Whether retro planet is a significator for the Bhava results under study. Whether a retro planet is cancelling any good yoga formed at birth, that is yoga bhanga. Example, Richaka yoga is spoiled if Mars is retrograde. So whether the retro planet is exalted or debilitated in natal or transiting positions, connection of other planets with retro planets at birth or in transit, duration of retro, stagnant and direct motion of the retro planet. So is retro planet in the star of a direct or retro planet? The retro planet is in the star of a direct planet star or its own star kind of thing. And is it a natal chart or a question chart? Question chart means Prashna chart that is under study. Plus, eminent authors have differed in their views. The actual results from a retro planet depend much on the strength and weakness of the natal chart, which is very valid point. There is need to analyze birth chart with retro planets because of present day complex and complicated life events. So following are some of the views of prominent authors on the effect of retro planet in natal chart. So the karakatva of a retro planet works in an adverse manner in any natal chart. So retro planet in birth chart indicate the deficiency of that particular chakra in the body and of that karakatva at birth time. So retro planet as a karmic planet indicates more about bad karma committed by the native in his previous life connected to that karakatva. So what happens exactly in previous life cannot be narrated literally, but a retro planet indicates the area of error or errors basing on its karakatva. So a debilitated planet, if in retro motion, definitely gives good results. Fifth point, an exalted planet, if in retro motion, gives difficulties in the dasa period of that particular retro planet. Sixth point, a retro planet exalted in Rasi and debilitated in Navamsa, indication is good result in the dasa period of that particular planet. Functional benefits, if in retro motion, gives good results. Functional malefic, if in retro motion, definitely gives bad results. So a retro planet during retro motion is likely to enter into previous sign. Even then, such retro planet continue to give the results of the sign where it started. So, for example, Saturn retrograde in Libra, so it and happens to enter in Virgo. So, still being in Virgo, Saturn gives the results of the Libra, the house Libra, which where it is first retrograde. But this, in the case of Jupiter, it is little different. It is an exception to this. Jupiter gives the result of the sign where it is posited actually. So that means Jupiter, suppose for example, starts retro in Gemini and happens to enter into Taurus. Jupiter gives the results of Gemini while in Gemini as well as in Taurus too. In the first case, Saturn, wherever it is giving only the first retrograde position of the house results it is giving. But whereas Jupiter, when it is in which Rasi retrograde, whether the previous house or first house, in whichever house it is, it will give the results of that particular house only. This is the difference between Jupiter and other planets. Any planet, when it is retrograde, that retro planet to which house it is Vyadhipati becomes powerless to spoil that house. For example, Aquarius Lagna native, the Aquarius Lagna native, Jupiter is the 2nd and 11th lord. And if Jupiter is retrograde in that particular horoscope and running its dasa, the native enjoys the results of 3rd and 12th. So if you look at it, Jupiter, when it is retrograde, it becomes the 12th, it becomes the 12th house for Aries Lagna as well as Aries, for Aries Rasi as well as for the Capricorn Rasi. So here in this example, Kumbha Lagna, then the 3rd house is going to be Aries. So that is why 3rd house, and 12th house is going to be again Sagittarius, which is the 12th house, which is the retrograde position for the 12th house. 12th house is again Capricorn. So that is a 12th house. So the results of Aries and the results of Capricorn, for both these houses, Jupiter is going to be the 12th lord. That's what you have to understand. I repeat, for Aquarius, for any planet when it is retrograde, this is very important concept, so I'm just repeating it. Any planet when it is retrograde, that retrograde planet to which house it is Vyadhipati becomes powerless to spoil that house. So, for example, Aquarius Lagna native, Jupiter being the 2nd and 11th lord, if retrograde and running its dasa, the native enjoys the results of 3rd and 12th because it cannot affect the results of 3rd and 12th houses. So, in short, when a planet is retrograde, it gives the result of a bhava succeeding to the bhava owned by the retro planet. So, we can see this in for all the 12 lagnas in the coming slide. You see here Aries. Suppose Aries is the lagna. Suppose Mars is retrograde. Mars is the lord of Aries and he is also lord of 8th house Scorpio. So, for the 2nd house Taurus, it is being the 12th lord, and also for Jupiter, that is Sagittarius, it is going to be the 12th lord. So the 2nd and 9th houses are not going to be affected. Similarly, for Mercury, it is the 4th and 7th. If you look at it, 4th is from Aries, it is the 3rd, but 4th house is what is Cancer, and the 7th house is Libra. For Cancer, Mercury is the 12th lord. When you consider Cancer as the lagna, then Mercury is going retrograde. Mercury is the 12th lord, and for Libra also, he is the 12th lord, being the lord of Virgo. So like that, I have given in the table. Jupiter 10 and 1, Venus is 3 and 8, and Saturn is 11 and 12. So this table actually tells when that particular planet is retrograde, and whichever house it is the 12th lord, that house being not affected, the results of that house are not being affected because of the retrograde position of that particular 12th lord. of that particular house. Now, suggestion to be given to natives. So when transiting Mars is retrograde, suppose Mars is retrograde, so what the people have to do? They have to wait and plan for future. They should not be a hurry in planning and all those things. So they should not do anything in a hurry, and avoid frustration. Do not resort no to poor choices. They don't need to be hasty. They don't need to take hasty decisions. They can actually sit and plan comfortably. Maintaining energy levels, control impulsive actions, avoid arguments. Usually, people have to avoid arguments, not to initiate new projects when Mars is retrograde. No, not okay. Accept compromises. So we have to underplay our ego and go for compromises whenever it is required. So review goals and methods adopted, ensure proper health and avoid stress related matters, willingly adjustment to the situations. So this is what people have to do when Mars is retrograde, either in their natal chart or in the transit. Now, when Mercury is retrograde, following are the planet-wise general suggestions to be given to any native by different astrologers to adjust to the times of retrograde planet. So when transit Mercury is retrograde, it is a chance to think of ways to improve life. So usually people, it doesn't allow people to think, so you have to adopt thinking. To review and revise native's lifestyle, time to plan for changes in future, adjust himself and act on issues by giving new directions, to know that adjustments made in retro periods will prevail throughout the year. So we need to be very careful the decisions what we have taken and the improvements what we are planning for life, because that will affect the native throughout the year. To understand that things may go away from their regular way, so that's what also need to check. To avoid scope for misunderstandings, delays, disrupted negotiations, defective communications, etc. So we have to, as far as possible, we have to avoid all these things. Be alert to face any unforeseen changes and obstacles. To understand the impact in retro times, especially on his mind and his thought process. It is very important what is going on in your mind and in and the thought process. We have to check before acting. So you can adopt plan, act, check, and do concept at that time. Now, when transit Jupiter is retrograde, so verify any chance to gain a better perspective on life. So sometimes we get we change our perception towards life. We may feel pessimistic kind of attitude and all those pessimistic kind of attitude and all. So examine the chances of gains by reviving old contacts. So sometimes you can contact your old people, and then old people in the sense old friends, or whom you have not continued the friendship or whatever it is. So you can actually contact and talk to them, and sometimes you get better suggestions, better ideas with some people whom you actually respect. So understand the scope for any useful journeys. Get ready to receive the results of past deeds. Make all efforts to complete any job left incompleted earlier. Any incomplete work you can complete during this time. Improve knowledge of about spiritual matters. Improve knowledge of spiritual matters, and during retrograde Jupiter, training is also possible. So people can go for training and improve their skills. That also can be done. And when transit Venus is retrograde, so we need to verify the impact on love matters and values thereon. Think of development of personal life and relationships. To postpone marriage kind of performances, if any, till Venus turns direct. To postpone any major financial decisions. Not to start any new things till its direct motion. The plans of beautifications, decorations will fail if you take up during the retrogradation period. So control the nature of doubting. Control the nature of doubting himself with any complexities that also need to be controlled. Watch and ward any critical direction of current relationships. Avoid to plan any major changes to himself or his house. Home related changes and all those things can be avoided during the Venus transit. Get ready to receive old friends that may come back, possible. Now, when transit Saturn is retrograde, review and accomplish any pending commitments. So learn to resist any tension due to delays and obstacles. Avoid frustration by accepting things as they are. Take up issues based evaluation and openly decline unfavorable issues. Not to begin a new venture without considering the completion of past commitments. So do not accumulate so many things at a time without completing. Try to complete all the already committed projects kind of things, or committed works, whatever it is, and then take up a new project. Scan the surroundings and see how to change the current critical situations. Not to get disappointed if things don't work out as per plans. It is definitely will happen. So people have to be have patience, during that period. Review and recognize important life matters. So you need to check and then take the condition, current situation, and then accordingly you have to plan. Now I'll take few examples. I'm sorry, I could not put the North Indian style, so please excuse me, all of you, for that mistake. So it is a natal chart of a female. In this chart, if you observe, Mars is retrograde, Saturn is retrograde, as well as Jupiter is retrograde. So three planets retro motion and Venus is combust. So if you look at it, Venus is just close to Sun. So she set her own standards in selecting the spouse for her marriage. So in spite of best efforts by parents, and she's still struggling, in the sense, at the time of the chart when we have taken, struggling for the past few years to finalize a life partner, but she could not find one. So no employment due to poor performance in technical education. That also you can see that Saturn is retrograde. So technical education is also got affected. Mars is also retrograde, and consequently becoming erratic and losing health while in search of suitable marriage alliance. So she could not find a suitable marriage alliance because of her standards, because of her expectations about the spouse. Let us go to the second chart. In this is again a chart of a female. Here, Mercury is retrograde and posted in the Lagna. Mercury is retrograde, conjoined with Saturn, Lagna Lord in Aquarius and Ascendant. Native joined as an officer in government service. She has gone to abroad many times for better employment for about a decade. She traveled without completing the leave formalities in government service. At a stage, disciplinary action was started by the government and the job was at a stake. But finally, she could compromise herself, and then she continued. At one stage, she decided to continue the government service. She was about to leave, but with some compromisation, she could continue the service. Meanwhile, had to face the wrath of disciplinary action and practically became much junior to all colleagues because of the rules not followed in the case of leaves and other things. Another example, this is an example of chart of a male. Two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are retro motion here. Jupiter is exalted but retrograde, and Saturn is in Scorpio, retrograde. So native is suffering for want of money. See, the second lord Jupiter is retrograde but exalted but retrograde. So no proper employment. He indulges in real estate business. So he tried to do real estate business, but there also he could not get much money. So most of the times the native is in financial risk. So every time he is having lots of financial problem. Now the last chart of this presentation. So this is chart of a famous Telugu singer. I'll tell the name. So struggled for money, for bread and butter till 55 years of age. That is around the commencement of retro Mercury Mahadasa. So Mercury was in retro motion, posited in 7th bhava along with Sun and Mars. Own sign with Sun and Buddhaditya forms Buddhaditya Yoga, and also conjoined with Mars. So Lagna is Sagittarius, retro Mercury is the 7th lord. So being the 7th lord, Mercury is the Badakadapati. So is the 7th and 10th lord is also retro and is the Badakadapati and is combust. So native was a very good singer in Carnatic classical music. a renowned singer in cine field in the earlier part of his career. So early 60s, 50s and 60s, he was the sang Telugu songs in some of the Telugu movies. So being very orthodox in social movements, could not make money even for minimum livelihood during that period. So suffered with financial crisis for better and better at that time. But by the time of Buddha Mahadasa commenced around 55 to 60 years, he has written Hanuman Chalisa in Telugu and became a devotional singer. So he has given many programs in Andhra Pradesh, in London and other foreign countries. He made lot of money, earned name and fame. So his program was then recorded and being played in many parts in an important temples even now, even after his death of 20 plus years. His name is M.S. Ramarao. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Hope you like the presentation.